Okay, you're live.
So this is Senate Transportation. It is Thursday, March 20th. We are here to talk with AOT and the Roadway Division and their budget. And if you could introduce yourself, we're on. Welcome.
Sure. So I'm Matt Pagachik. I'm the program manager for the Highway Safety and Design section. And
Oh, I
It's like,
didn't do that. Sorry.
sorry, I didn't mean to hit it 3 or 4 times after you there.
It should work.
Got it. Thank you. So here. All right, looks good. So my name is Matt Pagachik. I am the program manager for the Highway Safety and Design section, and I'm here to talk to you about the 3 program budgets that fall underneath me. That would be the paving program, the roadway program, and the traffic and safety program. So they're relatively straightforward in name. Paving program is basically anything that's straightforward preventative maintenance up to the reclaim projects and really addressing some of the structure. Roadway can be anything from small culverts to replacements with larger box culverts, long linear reconstructions, slope stabilizations, rock cut stabilizations. They're also where most of our ER projects end up at least managed out of. And then traffic and safety is dealing with the intersections, traffic control, basically all things traffic control. So up first, we'll jump into the paving program. This is a snapshot of one of the projects that officially finished up last year. Most of the work was done in 2023. It was Brattleboro Newfane on Route 30. In the white book, this would be under tab 5A. So I throw this slide on here just to recognize that, the paving program, the main focus of the paving program is just that. It's resurfacing of the roadway. It's addressing that immediate need of the roadway, which is that surface condition. Sometimes that means structure. Sometimes that just means fixing what's on top. Most of the time we're getting into ancillary items, which could be culvert replacements. It could be doing a little bit of slope stabilization, keeping that focus in mind of addressing the immediate need of the road, but then trying to fix what we can for what makes sense.
So we've had some of it. What would be helpful is on a sheet. You have the agency has, and we have a system. It's a point system, how projects move ahead in bridges, all of the stuff. Some of it starts with the Regional Planning Commission and the tax. Some of it is the little vehicle that runs around and does surface condition. Some of it is traffic on the road. It would be nice if that was on one page so we can put it in our folder with that. So when people ask us how a project goes through the system or how you affect that we could do that. So if somebody in the agency must have that someplace.
Yeah, and that's I'm going to look over to Rob a little bit. I think that's going to be something that I have to follow up with asset management with.
Yep.
Because there are different channels
Yeah,
you kind of reference.
I get it, but you get your list of what's percolating toward the top. And I quite frequently say to my towns when they complain about certain roads, I say to them, have you been sending your member to the TAC committee at your regional planning commission? Because that's the place that you start to climb onto that list. And if they haven't, but it would be nice if you could come back for us and just, because in the front of like the paving, how did this come ahead and how did this percolate to the top?
Sure. Yeah. And I can, very quickly touch on it with paving. That one, that's where I came from. So I know a little bit more about this one. But paving is really that asset condition driven decision. Those are not typically put forward through like the VPSB2 process. They're usually, it's that van data to say, here's what the condition is. We have a bunch of different scenarios that are run in the pavement management system that highlights what we should be, the bin of treatment that we want to be in. And then it's really making sure that we meet that year, get the project out to meet the year. So we're doing the right treatment, right time on the right road. But there are many changes.
Go ahead.
That's a great suggestion. And, if you're able to have process diagrams or flow charts, I mean, I would think you might have those already, but it would be really helpful to be able to explain the process. And so then just a different question, just what you just said about paving. So I'm thinking you probably want to group the projects too, just to get a better contract. So that's probably part of your process.
Yeah, yep, we do at times. We're not necessarily putting out a certain amount of work in a certain area because it is really based on the condition of the roadway.
Okay.
Within the program, we have the ability to do what we call a composite contract. So if we recognize that there are 2 or 3 municipalities that are getting class 1 paving in a given year or right around the same year, we'll try to adjust schedules so that we can send those out at the same time and then hopefully get the benefit of like a bulk pricing. If they're right next to each other, especially if the limits are right up against each other, we do try to link those up. But it's not necessarily something where a road may be shifted forward in time or further out in time just to match up with another one.
And then are you going to talk about safety? Because otherwise I would ask that question right now.
Go ahead.
Just so how do like accidents and pedestrian, hopefully not too many fatalities, but just all of those accidents go into your decision on which roads to pave first, because sometimes paving does impact.
Yeah, so the safety aspect of it is probably something that we'll touch on a little bit more in the traffic and safety side of it.
Okay.
I can talk about it a little bit more.
Okay.
It is something that, when we're developing a project, we're doing typically a pretty substantial review of what data we have. So if we recognize that we can do a quick turnaround fix and maybe get a step improvement in safety, then we'll try to do that with a project. We still do limit our scope to what our bounds are so that we make sure that we get the project out. Because again, it's right road, right time, right treatment. So if we can fit something in that makes some improvement to safety, we will definitely do that. Oftentimes we're limited to pavement markings, maybe some minor realignments, traffic sign upgrades. Sometimes we can get a little bit more in depth than that with a paving project. Once they start breaching right of way lines, they tend to go to the other programs, to the traffic and safety program or the roadway program if it's more applicable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Broadmoor project that you showed really did improve safety because it put in a crosswalk.
Yep.
At a place that was very used.
Yep. At the retreat farm, right?
Right.
Yep.
Going to the meadows.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we have opportunities like that where we might be able to convert a wider shoulder into a dedicated bike lane,
Mhm.
or maybe there's a very small amount of widening that we need to do so that we can connect up a wider shoulder so that it's a little bit better for bicyclists to be on. We always do reviews for pedestrian crossings. If we know of a site, we will try to install it where we can or improve it where we need to. So those are the types of things that you would typically see in a paving job. Kind of that low hanging fruit.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Sorry, did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. So right into the numbers here. So the FY26 paving program is showing up on the screen here. For 26, we have an appropriation of $102.91 million, which is a decrease from fiscal 25 of about $27 million. This funding includes 3 different primary project phases. The bulk of this, as I've kind of referenced a little bit, most of this is in the preliminary engineering or the actual design phase and the construction phase. Right of way does not tend to be a big ticket item in the paving program because once you introduce right of way acquisitions, you introduce a little bit of risk to the schedule. And we're trying to address that need and make sure that we treat the road on time.
So tell me we got a list yesterday of projects that are the federal highway administration funding is at risk. And so I look at the roadway projects and I see the Champlain Parkway in Burlington. And I look at this list and I see Burlington and the city of Burlington. How would I relate this year? What's at risk to what's in here? And you may not be able to answer that. But I'm just trying to.
So I think I did the list. Yeah, sure. I think I can help while I was looking at the list too. The projects that are in these programs are typically funded out of our discretionary funds. So I don't know what the list was derived from, but my understanding is because these are out of our discretionary funds, they were not something that we had a risk associated with them. I believe that they're dedicated to.
What we heard is the primary programs that are the basic programs around don't seem to be at risk, but there's a bunch of this that were all grant.
Right.
And so when I look at this sheet and I see the biggest project in the thing is Burlington, Champlain Parkway, and I see the city of Burlington on here, I immediately go, well, are they related? And how would I know?
Yeah, so they're not, for the record, Rob White and Project Delivery Bureau Director at the Agency of Transportation. That list is specifically just what you said. Most of what's on there is separate money from our appropriation. So it's grant money that came through special situations. I see a lot of raised grants on there, and some other municipally run grants. But these programs that Matt's talking about today are our standard federal apportionments, and these are not at risk at all. These are formula funds that we're talking about.
These are all formula funds, and then and so these projects would be someplace else, not in.
They may be managed in some of these programs, but the money doesn't actually come through the formula funds that we're talking about here. They're separate appropriations. Most of them are grants. I saw most of them were the raised grants,
Okay,
which are grants that we applied for as well. Burlington Winooski Bridge, that's one you'll see in the structures program, but the funding comes through a special grant.
right, and that's on this list that is on hold. Okay, now, I'm just trying to figure out where they all.
Sure.
Because if I'm sure that when I go to work and I work in Winooski, somebody's gonna ask. Okay,
Did you need this list?
thanks for
Thank you.
that. That was helpful.
All right. Yeah. So back to this slide, just to kind of put the funding into how far that goes, and I do mean that literally in this one. So the budget is at least partially funding. It has construction funding shown for 46 different paving projects in fiscal 26. I say partially shown that it's helping to fund it. Typically, they're overlapping into different fiscal years. In addition, that funding is helping to advance projects, helping to advance another 34 projects within the program. So as it comes down to distance, we have approximately 71 miles that are planned to be paved on the interstate, state system, and class 1 system. And these are typically your 2-inch milling fill. If you think of a paving project, that's the job. And going up to the reclaim type projects. In addition to those 71 miles, there's another 31 miles of what we label as our federal leveling or our FPAVE program. This is really coming in to true up the surface. They're meant to be a little bit of a lower cost, and dedicated to keeping that road in good shape for a little bit longer until we can come back to those roadways.
And the total number of miles paved in this is
102.
102.
Yep.
Okay.
102 miles,
Yes.
because it's also 102 million. That's an interesting coincidence.
Yep.
So let me ask, in 25 budget, what would those numbers look like?
So in 25, it would have been, quick math, about $130 million, right? 130 million. And the miles paved last year was 181 miles.
181.
Yes.
So we are 181 miles in FY 25, and this is 102.
Yeah, and some of the, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison on miles per million.
Right.
Because it is, it's different strategies on which projects to put out. So, different levels, as I referenced, we have preventative maintenance that typically comes in quite cheap. Usually that's keeping a really good road in really good shape for a longer time. Think of it like a coat of wax on a car. You want to keep your paint in good shape, so you put a coat of wax on it. There are other projects that are significantly more expensive and shorter because we only have a certain amount of money to put out on time. So some of the mileage is, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Yes, it was $130 million last year and 181 miles. It was the mix of projects that we put out to be able to get to that level.
So what was last year?
181
181
miles.
miles
Yep.
and 100.
Roughly
30
130 million.
And then, but we also were told about the inflationary issues too.
Yeah.
So,
I believe that was a record last year, 130. I think that was the highest the paving program has been, or very close, right there in the top three, I believe.
Yeah.
of dollars.
Dollars or lines?
In dollars.
And go ahead, Pat.
No, didn't we hit 300 miles one time during ARPA funding or something? Or
We got up there pretty, when we do the lower level sort of paving projects, we get a lot more mileage out of it. And as soon as we start switching over, because paving projects can be very simple and very cheap on some level, but the higher extreme, more impactful ones where we're getting into signage, shoulders, all that, they get expensive really fast and we don't get as much for our money, but we get time, right? That road's going to stay better for a longer period of time. So there is a strategy there of mixing all those types. This one, you can see there's a lot more in the more significant 71 miles in the more significant projects than 31 miles in the less.
Yeah.
So the interstate system, the state in class 1. Does that take in like 78, Route 4, Route 7? In the classes, what type of road would fit into that?
Yeah. So that top white shaded line there, that is your interstate. So I-89, I-91, 93, 189. The state system is basically any numbered route in Vermont. So Vermont 78, Vermont 15, Vermont 116, those are all.
So it's the whole system, not the federally designated, 78 is the connection between the two interstates. So it has always been in a different category.
Yep.
Just trying to understand the categories.
Yeah. So when I put on here state system, that includes both the National Highway System designation or NHS route, as well as the non-NHS route, which if you're looking through your the white book, you'll see that there's a title, you'll see the location of the project. There'll be either an STP or an NH. That'll tell you the designation of if it's an NHS route versus just a state highway paving. And then, the federalized number after that, but that would all be included in that.
Did you have?
No, you both keep mentioning our miles and how much we have been able to do in the past. And I'm trying to find the great presentation we got that listed all of this, and I can't find it. I've searched through like 3 different witnesses. So I don't know if you have that chart, or if you know what I'm referring to, might be able to direct me, but we had previously heard testimony and I don't think it was from the pavers. It may have been from Matt Coda, but essentially making the case, as the pavers would, that we need to be paving more. And that to maintain a 300 road miles per year is kind of the ideal. And then it was a comparison chart, and I just can't find it, but I will.
Maybe it's.
There
But
was a
maybe,
budget, somebody from the AOT budget,
yeah,
or who's had a.
maybe it was Kansas. I gotta look, but I'll find.
I think so.
Who's the head of asset management?
Oh, maybe.
And
And Valentine.
Okay, I'll look up Kansas.
So. We're just on the, but are you, can I ask another? are you-
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep.
So,
You're going
well, and feel free to go through the file.
Wendy, I'm gonna pass on that.
This might, look, this might be.
It's from ASCO, maybe.
Yeah. But anyway, do all of the, state or federal highway, like, you know, Route 4, Route 5, are they all in one category of federal?
They're
Or
not,
would
they have,
come- Okay.
the big difference there is there are federal requirements on the condition. So when we do separate them out by project because they're a different, they're a different asset class in a way. So we do have a different reporting measure of lowest measure that they need to be at. They are typically included in these. They just because they're an NHS route or a US route versus a state route, that doesn't kick them out of one of these two lines that
I
that I'm
see.
showing here.
Okay.
Really, the only thing that it's not unheard of. We did this, but the interstate typically does not fall into what I'm designating as the federal leveling. Typically, we did it out on the northbound barrel on 89 in the travel lane. That was more of that district leveling type project. Most of the time, though, we're doing this on your 2-lane type roads, and that can be NHS routes, it can be US routes, it can be Vermont state routes.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
on V-Transparency, I think there is a way you can see all of the different, basically the classifications within that. I think there is a layer you could pull, but I would be.
There might be,
There might
yeah. I think you might be right. I'm not positive though.
It does, of course, it doesn't cover non-state funded roads, but
Mhm.
I think you can even go back and see where a grant was used versus.
Okay. Let's go.
All right, continuing on. So actually really good way to segue into this sheet. So as I mentioned, the NHS routes do have a kind of a higher threshold of the condition. So this is the 10G1 report. These are the projects that were added after fiscal 25. The bulk of these projects, actually all of these projects, fall on the NHS route. So we're doing work to make sure that we're keeping our NHS routes in good shape. Bulk of these are 2-inch mill and fill type projects. So again, it's that classic, you tell somebody you're paving the road, it's exactly what they're going to think of. The only two to call out here is the Guilford Brattleboro project. You'll see that is designated with an IM SURF number. That means that it is more of the preventative maintenance. So it should just be a thin mill and fill type treatment. And then Berlin East Montpelier is the only one that is not on the interstate in this particular subset.
And the 10G report is the after one. This is the work you have if it's the special part of the budget where if you end up having money, you do these. Is that?
These are the projects that were programmed after fiscal 25 was already I'll call it cut for lack of a better term. So we had the fiscal 25 budget. These were added to the program after that budget was set.
And how, so that means, A, you had more money than you needed, so you're able to afford to do those projects. Is that a fair way to put that? Or how do you choose these projects?
Yeah, so these are
We don't review them.
right. So these are
That's why
not necessarily.
I wanted, that how you make the decision, so things perk up in front of this.
And they
Because-
used to have it in the book. I don't know if they still do.
On the decision.
No, like
matrix.
we used to get the 10G report as like an add-on that would fill in.
It is in
Yeah,
the
it's in
white
the-
book.
it's in
Yeah.
the back of I think it's the back of the white book. But yeah, so these are these are not necessarily surplus funds in 25. These are just projects that we've identified as a need that were added. So they wouldn't have shown up in the fiscal 25 budget book or the white book. They are showing up in the 26 book. Go ahead, Rob.
So just when I look at this list, they're all 90-10 projects except for the last one. And the last one is 80-20.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Go ahead.
So
Let's see, you should have had a chair up. We tried.
We have,
So the 10G report is a statutory requirement that basically legislators wanted a way to see what projects were coming off the books, what projects were coming on the books. And that's really how it works. And it's similar to the chair said, right? Like we're completing some projects. This next round of projects are the ones that are going to be coming in the next budget years that you'll hear more about. And then also there's a third part to the 10G's reports that have to do with projects that have escalated in cost significantly. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And I just wanted to point out, Matt mentioned it, but when you see a project that has that IM, it has Colchester IM, Bethel Brookfield IM is an interstate project.
Yep.
That's the funding program. The one down at the bottom, that's NH, that's National Highway System. So that is a special pot of money for National Highway System. If you see STP, that is the sort of highest level money that we can kind of use almost on anything. So those three are pretty easy designations to tell what they are when you see those types of projects. And it goes to the funding split as well.
Is this normal to have everything interstate?
It is not, but we do know on the interstate, and it doesn't mean that in the coming years, it'll be all interstate projects in the budget. It just means that we're preparing for a lot of interstate resurfacing work. The interstate hasn't had much for complete reconstruction along it since we put it in place. And so you're going to see a lot of paving projects come on board just for right out here, you know, from here to Waterbury. The interstate is getting in pretty rough shape. We did a repair last year on the northbound. This year, you're going to see a repair on the southbound. And so you're going to see more of these types of projects too, to just sort of get the interstate in a nice stable spot.
I should go ahead, Pat.
The book, I don't have it in front of me, but the book lists miles for each of those projects, right? Miles paved. Still,
Good question.
I don't know for
they
sure.
used to.
Yeah, I, 10G report really bringing me back to house transportation
Yeah.
days, so yeah. Yeah.
It may
Might
in
have
the
been in the
project,
comment.
yeah, in the comment of the project description,
But I don't think it's required.
Okay.
and 10, you call it 10G because that's the,
Section of statute that says
that
that. we must
asks for
report
that
this out.
report.
Doesn't, yeah, this does not give us,
No,
I think it'll only give you the mileage if the project manager put it in the comments.
Oh,
And just because I'm new in this here, is this what you're talking about? These?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, mileage would probably be a good thing to.
sometimes, yeah. Used to.
okay,
All right, stepping along, this is the second of the 10G reports. These are the increases to projects of $5 million or more than 75% when compared to the fiscal 25 estimate. Very high level, these projects have gone through more plan refinement. The Killington Stockbridge project is basically at a contract plan or contract ready plan stage. So there was some final processing. We were going back through the estimate numbers, making sure that things are matching what our current bid prices are. That's how this one landed on this list. The two Montpelier Waterbury projects that you're seeing here are falling into the initial estimate that was thrown in, basically as a placeholder for us to say, we have roughly this amount of money. We don't really know what the scope is yet. So we're going to put this number in here thinking that it's going to be in the right amount. As we went through plan development, really define what that treatment was going to be, we've come out with that refined number, which is at that roughly $17 million. I will note that the PREN 56 project, so the one on the bottom here, this one is the southbound project, which is currently out to bid in plan for the more immediate future. The number that's being used here for the PREN 55 project is same type of treatment in the northbound barrel. So we're taking the information that we have on southbound, and saying, okay, it's probably going to be costing about the same amount for the northbound, assuming we do the exact same treatment.
Everyone's going one way or the other.
Pretty fair comparison, right?
I mean, I go north every day, so.
Yeah.
Special treatment.
10G3 is a newer report, I believe, for this year. This is an increase of $10 million or an increase of 100% when compared to the preliminary plan phase. So this is not the same comparison as before. In this case, you're looking back to whatever was the estimate, the preliminary plans, whenever in time that was, as compared to what the current estimate is. So at preliminary plans for Killington Stockbridge, we were at roughly $13.2 million. At the almost contract plans, we're at almost $31 million. One big piece of this is inflation, right? You can see on the bottom of this paragraph that preliminary plans were estimated in 2014. So we have plan refinement that took place in that time. For the most part, the scope stayed relatively the same. There may have been some minor adjustments, which could have caused some of the increase. But 2014 dollars are very different than 2025 dollars. So that's a big portion of this. And lastly, of the 10G reports, these are the projects that are no longer funded in 26. And the reason for that is these projects are complete. So we finished them up in fiscal 25. They will not show in 2026.
Love seeing Hartford.
Good reason to not show them.
US survived. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the roadway program. So this will be fast.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
here's part of our problem. We have the commissioner here to do for confirmation. We're on the floor at 10.
Okay.
We said adjourn at 10:15 on here. So.
Yeah, well, we're on the floor at 10.
Joint session.
Yes, that was.
And then the joint session. Are you guys, well, Megan we have free time on Friday. Can you? I'm sorry to do this.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We have two more programs left here, correct?
Yes. Yep.
And I am back tomorrow with Carolyn, I think, in the structured program. And so, or a following week, whatever you want, we can come back and do the additional
Yeah,
program.
we should probably get through this. So if we can juggle the schedule around, and we can, move on and just, we need to get the commissioner,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the chair.
Sure.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming and presenting to us. If I have specific questions about projects that are within your sections, I found that, well, at least in the House side, there are so many of us, it's really annoying when we all randomly ask about our town's projects. What is the best way for us to contact you if we have specific projects or questions?
Sure. So you can, you'll have my contact information, so you can reach out to me and I can put you in contact with the right PM.
Okay.
The other way would be to go to V-Transparency, a huge proponent of
Love
using
that.
V-Transparency. So contact information is on there for every project. So if you're in that,
Your email's right there.
yes, yep, and my email's right there. So either way works for me. Whatever way you want to go is fine.
Thank you. So I will refrain from asking all of my little sticky questions about
Sure.
specific projects.
Well, and you might get sticky questions.
Yeah.
Okay. thanks.
Hold back. I mean, I got a few, but
So do you want us to come back or do you?
Talk to Megan.
Yeah.
She's, I do what she tells me,
Okay,
but,
Okay.
tomorrow we should be able, and we need to get through this before we move on to the next piece. So,
got it.
Okay.
and sorry, our schedule is
Does that
crazy.
mean you're-
I'm gonna go right here. I think that
You did it really nice.
Yes. I'm done.
We need to,
Yes. I didn't know if you wanted me to just try to
No,
race through or
no.
okay.
But
Yep, no
but
problem.
it's actually better for you to come back and then we can talk.
Sure.
Yeah.
the same.
And we'll give you an opportunity.
How do you pronounce it? And both.
Pagachik.
Say gotcha.
It's not quite as bad as it looks.
That's
scary. Oh.
So I've heard you in a dom.
That's all right.
Oh, yeah, yep.
I don't want to kick you out, but I'm
Right,
going
you're kicking me out.
Yeah, yeah.
See, that's right. Thank you for your time and I will be back.
Good. Yeah.
Intrigued what?
Yeah.
Hi.
State police.
Hi.
State police, I think historically, the state police came out of the highway division, and the original enforcement was the state highway division. I'll bring a picture of my great uncle who was the captain, enforcing prohibition.
Oh,
And, the
That went
state,
well.
I think it
They're
was,
arresting my family.
it was someplace 1939 or 40 in there that they moved out into their own division. But that's why it's a historical piece why the commissioner is in front of transportation.
Okay. Interesting. So I thought it was just that Senator Mazza wanted to do my
We do
confirmation. He said, I asked if I could do your confirmation because I had been the police chief in his town.
Right.
So I don't know.
It could be a bit of.
I don't know where my churling was confirmed, if it was in here or somewhere else.
Well, historically, it was because,
Of the birth of
the
way
bird
state
came
was
out of, the highway department.
correct.
And so it was in that piece, and I don't think it's ever changed
Oh.
since then. So that's where
Yes.
it lies.
Perfect.
I can't think of it.
I'm delighted to be wherever you need me to be.
I'll bring in the picture. I have a picture of my grandmother's brother, my Uncle Albert, and they're all in jogger pants and their
Mhm.
motorcycle out in front. And there's this whole line, and it's quite interesting. And they
I
were
think we have a
enforcing.
copy of that.
And I probably shouldn't
Actually.
tell the story, but I'm blanking and then we'll let you go ahead. But I'm sitting at a dinner. My Uncle Albert had long retired. He was 14 years old and my grandmother. And my grandmother's sitting here at the table, and it's a big table with all family and friends. And my Uncle Albert's sitting here, and my grandmother goes, well, we used to read your logbook to figure out where you were going to be and where the guys were going to be. So we knew where to go out and dance and have a good time. And my Uncle Albert said to my grandmother, Eleanor, it would be awfully embarrassing if the captain's sister got picked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And that was, that was 50 years later in the early 1980s. So
A lot of secrets come out.
50 years later. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Senator. It's delightful to be here. My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety. And I believe I'm here to seek
I
reconfirmation.
think if you could give us a little bit about your background, tell us why you would like to retain the job, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Well, I was born and raised in New England, Maine, and then moved to New Hampshire. I attended schools in Hanover, New Hampshire before heading off to Washington, DC to play Division I college soccer. While I was there at the George Washington University, I stumbled into a double major of journalism and criminal justice. And then during my senior year, I did an internship with the United States Secret Service as part of my major. And I knew that I needed to do something in that field. I thought I wanted to be a Secret Service agent. But it made sense to go get some street smarts because I was, according to my mentors, a very book smart young person, athletic, ready for the job, but didn't really have any street smarts. So they suggested that I become a police officer for a few years. So I did, as luck would have it. I began working at the Burlington Police Department in 1990. And very shortly after, I became the girls' soccer coach at Rice High School, back when I was young.
I remember.
I know you remember. So I became very immersed in the Burlington community, and I got married and had 2 beautiful daughters, and it never crossed my mind again to leave. And 23 years later, I retired from the Burlington Police Department as the deputy chief and became the chief of police in Colchester. I served in Colchester for just over 5 years, and then I retired but it didn't stick.
Thought you did.
I thought I had retired. I was doing consulting and training and teaching for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And I was at the time teaching a leadership curriculum, a 3-week leadership curriculum. And then many things happened in life. My husband became gravely ill and we ended up spending a lot of time in Boston. The very day that we were at Dana-Farber and they told us that he was in remission and would be eligible for a stem cell transplant, the very day, Moreau Weinberger called and asked if I would come back to Burlington as the interim chief. And I was like, well, it looks like I have 6 months on my hand before the stem cell transplant. Okay. And at the time, we had not had COVID. We had not had George Floyd. Moreau thought that he needed 6 months to post and run a process and find a new police chief in Burlington. And that was the deal. It was just 6 months. And so I went to Burlington, back to the mothership that I spent my entire young adulthood at. And it was incredibly hard work. It was very gratifying work. And then COVID happened and it became topsy-turvy and unlike anything I had ever experienced. And just 6-ish short weeks later, George Floyd was murdered, perhaps maybe 8 weeks later. And we were thrust into a really difficult time in the Burlington community. And I had to walk away in the middle of it. So on the very day that we were moving the next morning to Boston for my husband's transplant in first 100 days. My mother fell and broke her hip at assisted living on the very day, the last day at Burlington. So I never got to even say goodbye to everyone. And I got to see my mom, but then I couldn't see her again because of COVID. And because I had to go to Boston, it was just such a terrible ending. It was a terrible ending. So after I came back from my husband's first 100 days, I decided not to return to Burlington because of a lot of reasons that were clearly laid out in a letter that I provided, and that became public. And a couple of weeks later, the then Commissioner of Public Safety, who had been a colleague at Burlington, Mike Sherling, asked if I would come on board at Public Safety to do a very specific task related to developing a statewide use of force policy and a training curriculum, and basically working with stakeholder groups during a very animated time in our history of police community relations to come to a policy that all stakeholders could support. So I did that work for a little over a year, and then I became the deputy commissioner, and I was the deputy commissioner for about 8 months before Mike moved on to UVM and the governor appointed me as the commissioner. So I've been the commissioner for approximately just under 3 years now. We have enjoyed many, many successes. It's, as you know, it's a very, very dynamic department. We are 605 full-time employees and 200 part-time employees across a whole range of roles, that everything from public safety communicators to our swiftwater rescue teams to our seasonal auxiliary troopers who do boat patrols and snowmobile patrols. There's just a lot of folks in that 200 that we couldn't run our operations without. So we're 800 strong. And we are a 24/7, 365 operation. We have had a lot of organizational strain due to the flooding of 2023 and 2024. I believe that my very small Vermont emergency management team has performed heroically with just literally not even recovering, as you know, from the flooding of 2023, when exactly a year to the day later, on July 10th, 24, we had another round of 100-year flooding. I'm not believing the hype anymore. I'm not believing the hype anymore.
It's all.
So that has sort of defined a large portion of my tenure as the commissioner, has been the flooding. We continue to wrestle with, but are making progress with, staffing shortages in the Vermont State Police. In the interim, while we are beginning to see our numbers creep up, and we have finally met the point where we are hiring as many as we are with the retirement and attrition. So we're holding steady and hoping in the next couple recruit classes to start gaining ground. In that time period, I've worked closely with the colonel to civilianize 12 positions that previously were performed by sworn law enforcement, and we determined that these were roles that could be performed by civilians.
There's
So.
3 of us here on appropriations.
We're doing everything we can to not drop our levels of service to the people of Vermont. We are the primary law enforcement agency for 80% of the population and 90% of the landmass in the state. And it's been an incredibly stressful time for the men and women who have had to work with very little relief. We're also the home to fire safety and the Vermont Crime Information Center, the radio technology shop, the Vermont Forensic Lab, and the finance and administration, which handles a absolute giant mountain of grant money. We are the pass through for all the FEMA funding in the wake of these disasters, plus many other federal grant streams that support our operations and those of nonprofit partners and local municipal partners. So I'll stop there in the interest of time. I could go on.
We hear the excitement in here, but why do you want to do this?
Well, let me say this. I think it took me a couple of years to really get my arms around everything that was going on. Public safety is huge and it's evolving constantly. And it took me the first couple of years to build my team, which I have finally built the commissioner's team and have all the right people in the right places. And we are really moving like a well-oiled machine. I have finally built a team and restructured some ways that groups operate and information flows that I feel we are properly executing our role as the governor's Homeland Security Advisor. Mm-hmm. I have recently been reelected to the executive committee of the North America. It's the U.S. and its territories. So there's 53 of us, I believe. So each state and territory has a Homeland Security Advisor, and I've recently been reelected for a second 2-year term to the executive committee of the National Governor's Homeland Security Association. And I feel like I'm really, really hitting my stride finally in this role. I mean, for many, many years, I've been a experienced and skilled law enforcement leader, but public safety is about way more than just the Vermont State Police. So that's why I think I'm a valuable asset to the governor's team. I think I bring a very holistic approach to my work. I'm first and foremost a wife and a mother and a grandmother. And I think that when you keep that at the front, then you're really thinking about the intersection of public health and public safety for everyone, because it's not just about police or the fire service or the forensic lab, as cool as that stuff is. It really is about making Vermont safe and relatable for all.
Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us.
You're welcome.
And I would just say that unless you say something outrageous in the next 5 minutes, I think that you have.
Don't test me.
Don't make it a challenge.
Don't scare me.
I'm saying don't get rid of white rejection. I mean it. But I really appreciated working with you, and you have such a level of professionalism that's very helpful. And I wanted to ask, because I see you all the time in Senate GovOp, but never really in here.
Right.
But you've also got another committee that you might be spending some time in with institutions and now digital. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to that angle of things, because I don't really understand how that all fits in.
Well, it would really depend on which technologies you want to talk about. If you want to talk specifically about public safety communications, we are the home to 2 of the 6 statewide public safety answering points, but we also do emergency communications dispatching from those PSAPs.
Okay.
So there are 37, I'm going to call them dispatch centers across the state. Only 6 of those are also public safety answering points, meaning 911 calls come directly there. Then the 911 call is transferred to a dispatcher. So there are 911 call takers who serve a certain function. But that call, once the immediate intake is done, gets transferred to a dispatcher so that people in apparatus can get to where they need to be.
Okay.
So there's an awful lot of technology involved in Land Mobile Radio Networks, which our radio technology shop owns a statewide and operates and maintains a statewide land mobile radio network. And it's a lot of technology that's one part I still don't have my arms fully around, but I'm getting there. It's really a niche skill set and space. But we also obviously use a lot of technology in our technology investigations unit. As you know,
Mm.
technology is involved in every criminal investigation now. And it's a constant race to keep up with the bad guys on how they leverage technology. So there are a lot of parts and pieces to how we use and how we maintain different technology systems. But of course, we do it all in partnership with ADS or whomever else. In some cases, it's AOT that we provide the land mobile radio infrastructure for them as well. But we work in partnership with whoever we need to across the state enterprise to benefit everyone.
Well, I really appreciate the breadth and depth of the work that you do. And I know we did just have an executive order on our docket for Senate Government Office that we all voted yesterday to decline to reorganize. So I look forward to those conversations being had in the
May I
legislature.
speak to that?
Yeah, I brought it up, so you're
Right, thank you. The whole point of this executive order was to not reorganize. And it was a very simple flip from a department to an agency because it wasn't controversial, because the size and the complexity and the mission critical nature of our work makes us suitable. We are the third largest department or agency in state government. We should be an agency just by size and nature of our work. The executive order was specific to not rearranging other parts of state government to flip us to an agency. There's obviously an ongoing conversation out there about should other things be under the umbrella of public safety. We're open to those conversations, but we also realize that every time one of those conversations comes into the consideration, it's a reason to say no, which includes the switch to an agency. So we were very intentional in saying we would like to be flipped to an agency because it is appropriate. And then we are wide open to these other discussions. And, you know, I know that we worked a lot on S-155, as did some of your colleagues, Senator Clarkson and Senator Hardy and others. And there are certainly conversations that we could pluck from that are still relevant. I have other considerations that I think are more pressing, but none of them should prevent us from becoming an agency. And that's why I wish the Senate would not. Either somebody would introduce a bill that mirrors the executive order and does nothing but flip us, or let it ride. That's my request.
Yeah, and I'll just say that bill Tucker has it drafted, it will be introduced. But I agree with you on that point. I think that's a fair.
I think it's baby steps, right? In order to get where we're going. But anyway,
And I'm
We're out of
really
time.
sorry,
it's okay. So
but we have to go out to the Senate floor right now. And we thank you for
You're welcome.
coming. My plan is to deal with some of the appointments tomorrow
Okay.
on Friday, so you will be hearing.
you'll let me know.